So I didn't even know I had a volunteer. That was my first unknown through all of this. How is everyone doing? I mean, it's like the first day. My first event that I ever did with this conference was back in 2010. And we were talking at that time about more certain things, things that are in a closer amount of certainty than I think what we're expecting today. I don't know about you, but if you look at from a framing of different things, throughout my life, I approach problems in a particular way, maybe similar to how you guys do. But I'm an engineer by training, so everything to me is this system that we have. In the case of problem solving, that's my problem solving, where I put in coffee and a problem, and the output eventually becomes a solution of some sort. And of course, as an artifact, there's sarcasm. So if you follow me on Twitter, you'll find all sorts of different sarcastic views about Agile, leadership, all sorts of things associated to some of the craziness that we have as we go through Agile transformations, as well as what we do, I think, in our day-to-day life. I am a coach. Does anyone know what a coach is? That's uncertainty, right? Is any one coach the same? No. So when you're approaching a coach, you don't know what their values are, or what they're trying to go off and accomplish in organizations. For me, the biggest tenet that I have is treat people like adults. I want Agile transformations to empower people so that they can get their jobs done on a daily basis without being, Scrum as your babysitter. I don't want those things, My background is I was 32 years at a small company called Intel Corporation. Anyone hear of it? I know it's pretty obscure. Yeah, it's tiny. They'll be big one day. I'm not sure when. But during those 32 years, I was dealing with all sorts of massive amounts of complexity. And that includes anything from the complexity of the system that we were building. If you look at this picture over here, this is the actual number of teams that it took to create a laptop that you use today. It's 24 different teams, about 5,000 people working together in order to go deliver something. With that, we get this strong amount of social complexity because it wasn't just being delivered in one location, it was actually being delivered across 16 locations and across the planet. So you mix that into, if that wasn't bad enough in a known space, you also have the strategic complexity that comes in that actually is pulling you multiple different ways about what's the next requirement that we're supposed to go off and work on. Everyone's got, all of their requirements done, right? And at the very beginning that this is what we're going to do as our POR. And of course, at the end of the project, it always looks the same, right? Do you guys all have that? If you do, I want to talk to you because most of us don't have that worked out. And then, of course, the engineering complexities. On a personal note, I do have to bring up something because you'll probably notice I'm a little quirky on my right side. And the reason for that is that 3 years ago, I had a stroke. A blood clot went to my brain, and I got to the doctor very quickly. But I had lost my ability to speak, and I lost my ability to walk. And this picture of this thing going in my hand there, that was the miracle drug that actually brought back most of my functionality. I bring it up because my voice is different, and sometimes it's just distracting. To most people, they can't, if they've known me for years, they can't hear it, but I do. So occasionally I get a little bit of a stutter. I apologize for that. Main reason why I bring it up is if you have any of these symptoms at all, at work, at home, do not waste time. Get to the doctor. Because this particular shot that was given to me, they told me that it only works about 4% of the time. And I said, that's pretty low. He goes, well, it has nothing to do with the drug. It has everything to do with the time a person waits before they go in to get the shot. So that's my public service announcement for you. I would not be standing here today if it wasn't that I got in quickly, which is cool. Unknowns, they're all around us, right? I almost didn't make it to this event. This was the sign a couple of days ago, and if you notice, it says Munich canceled. And it wasn't just this one flight, it was multiple flights got canceled on me. And so I thought I would need to, maybe hire, a horse or something to get here. And so I was stuck in Poland for a few days, pondering what was I going to do next. Have you guys been in that situation? Where it's like you're faced with this high degree of uncertainty about what am I going to do next? How am I going to get... Just kidding. We all get this uncertainty that occurs. It hits us every day. And it's funny because as humans, there's a tendency that we have inside of us of the reason why this makes us nervous is, believe it or not, this beautiful picture. At the dawn of time, you used to live right in there. You lived in the trees. Long, long time ago. And this is where we worked. This was where our food was. We had to actually leave the safety of the trees in order to get someplace to eat. And we had competition. Now, the competition wasn't going for the same food. We were the food. And so our brains became hardwired after all of this survival techniques that we came, the heuristics that we built in order to survive. We started to have to deal with this, FUD. Do you know what FUD is? FUD is fear, uncertainty, and doubt. And those things combined together for humans creates a couple different responses. It's the fight or flight response. And depending on the degree of fear and the doubt and also the uncertainty that's in there, those can all have factors, especially when we're working on projects that cause us to not look at the whole solution space. And as engineers, we equate that any project managers in the room? Oh, don't be ashamed, man. I am. Everyone, meet this guy afterwards. He needs, a big hug, Project managers are okay. I like them. But project managers and actually all humans, we're always looking to reduce risk in our life. And in certain cases, that can't always be the case. Well, there is certain times that you do want to reduce risk. We know that we want to stay clear of certain things, because I'm not going there. There was actually another picture I almost picked for this. It was a bridge, and underneath the bridge it said Starbucks. I was like, cool. That would actually probably lure me in. But to think about this, boy, this thing's kind of quirky, by the way. We need to get, from a situational awareness perspective, we need to actually widen our eyes to see things that we might be, because of our fear response, our want and ability to avoid uncertainty, we sometimes run into things that we shouldn't. So a number of years back, I started looking at uncertainty as how can we turn this into the potential of allowing us to create better systems. Specifically, how do we keep uncertainty alive in our systems? That's the land of innovation. So we needed a toolkit to maneuver there. One of the things we learned as humans a long time ago, when we stepped out of the forest, we sent a friend first, right? No, we didn't do that. No, we came up with a set of tools of understanding what's the right time to come out into the woods in order for us to forage. The systems that we use, the rule of thumbs that are associated with that. And granted, in today's world, it's very complex, especially for engineers and testers today, because originally, in the emergent web space, this used to be the systems that we had, on the far right-hand side. And the complexity, way back when, used to be done by the user. If you remember PCs back in the day, you used to have to take a class in order to work with the system that you had, correct? because they were very complicated. We, the developers, put the complexity on our users. In the web space, that's not the case anymore. Complexity has now actually been transferred back to us as developers. So now that deals with another set of complexities. What our customer sees is this: just a black box, just a button that they push. They have no idea what's behind there. And which brings me to this example of the worst UX I've ever had in a hotel room. This was my thermostat. So as I put on my tester hat, and I suddenly needed to find out a few things about this. My room was too hot. So what do you think the middle thing is? Is that off? The dot? Is that the right temperature for most humans? What's the lowest temperature on here? Is that like Arctic freeze? And what the heck is it with the human with the little light around it? I would not push that button. Any UX designers here? Okay. Oh, yeah. Did you do this one? Okay. World's worst interface that you can, go look at. And that complexity of the single button system actually overcomplicates the system to the point I actually had to call down and say, my room is too hot. I'm tired of fighting with this control system that's in my area. Could we please, just... And they didn't do anything about it. I finally just opened a window. So I had a heater running, and they were just fighting with one another. In Agile, we have some ways of breaking some of this down. Have you guys played planning poker? What are the two vectors in planning poker that gets a high Fibonacci number? What are the two? Yes? Right, uncertainties. What else? What's the other number? Complexity. I heard complexity there. So a combination of those things as we go look at them, those are the things that allow us to understand that we're now in uncharted territory. High Fibonacci numbers let us know that we're in the land of complexity, where if I use my normal toolkit, they don't work there. And as you know, we start to collapse uncertainty as fast as possible within Agile by using Scrum. We use spikes, we use tracer bullets, we use other things in order for us to deal with this place right over here, the complex stuff. And complexity is kind of interesting because in technology, what it means is that when we're close to certainty and our teams have high domain knowledge and our requirement is close to alignment, those are the simple decisions that we go off and take. The stuff that I'm talking about is the ones that's way over here in the complex space, way up there, where we have far from agreement and we're far from certainty on anything. The way that we approach this and situationally how we can go off and handle these things is we needed a new operating system as engineers of how to go approach this. This is where I fell into using something called Cynefin. How many have heard about Cynefin? Few of you have. Cynefin, to me, gave words to something I already knew, but I didn't actually know what the right words were from it. I just had a gut that it existed, There's something in this that allows me to situationally work better as I was approaching my problem solving. Cynefin, by the way, as a word, it's a Welsh word, and it means a place of multiple belongings. And it's as it's intended, as I show you the Cynefin itself, the first reaction you might have is that it looks like a 4x4 matrix, and I can only be in one area. Reality is, you could be actually in all four domains at the same time. You can actually be working on a problem from a different dimension, but what this gives you is an operating system to be able to address it. In the case of simple systems or obvious systems, which is in this lower quadrant over here, where the cause and effect relationship is one-to-one, meaning like a light switch, we all know how a light switch works. It's something we've known over the years. We use a since-categorized response pattern to that, which is I look at a light switch, think of a categorization of all the light switches I've seen, and I know that I can go up and push the button, and I can turn the light off or the light on. In the complicated space, which is this upper quadrant up here, it's still an ordered system, but the system is so large that I, by myself, cannot know all the working parts. Like, say, a 747. No one person can hold the design knowledge in their head for that. It actually requires that you have a group of people come together, and in the world of engineers, guess what? This is where we spend most of our time in this sense, analyze, response pattern when we're actually approaching a problem. And that's the land of most of the things you do, right? You do analysis most of the time. Here's this new requirement. Let me go analyze it. And you come back with an assessment associated to that analysis. But what if you don't have the data? If I don't have the data in front of me, I can't analyze it. So in the case of complex system where the cause and effect relationship is always changing, I actually need to use a different thought process. And in this case, it's probe, sense, respond. Meaning, in order to understand something, I actually have to conduct an experiment. It's like walking up to somebody in this conference. You don't know if they're a doctor, a lawyer, an engineer, a tester, or whomever they are. You can make some assumptions by their looks, but reality is you have to probe. Well, be careful how you probe people, by the way. You go up and you engage with them and say, "Hi, my name's Ray, and what do you do?" And then as soon as I do that, knowledge comes to me. Now I know what that person does, or I know what the group of people go do. The last one is chaotic systems. And in chaotic systems, really, this is the land of innovation. It's where novelty comes out. Meaning, if you look at the act, sense, respond pattern, it means I just make a decision. I was going to be a doctor, and during that time when I was going to early medical school, I was actually a first responder on an ambulance. Ambulance first responders, this is their land as well. Meaning if somebody is bleeding on the ground, we don't just come up to them and go, "Huh, that person's bleeding. Let's go do an analysis on all the different places where somebody can bleed from. Let's maybe do some PowerPoint. Maybe let's go and do a couple structures, but have several meetings about that." No, we actually go and act. We stabilize the person, and then we do that sense to see where they're at, and then we respond. And the way that we work our way around Cynefin is we typically work our way around that way. We come into a chaotic situation, we act, then suddenly once the noise dies down, we're able to then do the probe, sense, respond, and then after that we can do a sense, analyze, respond, and then eventually we might be able even to do the obvious stuff as well. Or we can be in multiple domains at the same time. This is my Steve Jobs story. Everyone has a Steve Jobs story, right? So Steve Jobs cared a lot about this device. He was actually one of the lead designers for this. And what he came up with was that it had to fit in your hand correctly. This is what he cared about with this, how it fit, you can hold it, does it fit in your pocket well. His engineers came in and gave him an analysis and a prototype of the very first iPhone, and they were giving him a real in-depth analysis about how there was no more room in this to make it smaller. And what Steve was doing this whole time is he was ignoring them. He was just looking at this and going, "Oh, it's too big," he blurts out. And his engineers go, "Steve, haven't you been paying attention? There's no more room in there. We're showing you this." And Steve actually takes this $50,000 prototype, or it might have been more, and he walks up to an aquarium that's in the room, and he drops it in. And everyone's like shocked. And they thought he was going to storm out. And actually, he didn't storm out. He actually just bent down, and he looked in the aquarium, and then bloop, 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 bloop. As the air was leaving, he basically said, there's more room there. Go find it. And so in Cynefin, what he basically did is he actually took people from the tyranny of the expert up here in this quadrant, and he actually drove them down into chaos where they couldn't analyze their way out of it. They actually now had to go and make different decisions. To put it simply, their argument didn't hold water. Sorry for the pun. Anyway, but they had to go work themselves around situationally in order for them to get to where they needed to go, to be able to open innovation back up. And situationally, as a manager or as a leader or as a tester or as a developer, if I know what situation, if I'm thinking in the wrong space, then I can cause more harm to myself. That's when the tigers come out and get us. So being able to situationally say I'm in one particular place is important to us. And I'm not going to do that exercise, but I am going to say that when we know the least about something, and this is the other portion of this toolkit, which is when we know the very least, we actually need fast feedback cycles. And when you need fast feedback cycles, we need to change when we normally are doing like iterations and sprints. When we know the very least, maybe that's not the right method or methodology to go use. Maybe we need to do safe-to-fail experimentation instead. This probe over here, probe sense response, small pieces of execution that I can do versus trying to do everything through a 2-week time box. I need shorter time boxes so I can learn quickly, so I can fail safe. And in the fail-safe world, what we're trying to do is we're minimizing harm, maximizing learning, and we're looking for those things that are emergent in this case. By the way, I've got some funny pictures of this, which is not failing safe over here. I actually went and looked for these pictures, and you know what? I couldn't find any women doing anything stupid. It was only men. So, now, I wonder why that is. So, fail-safe probes, when you create them, it's not just arbitrary the way that you approach it. You're actually looking at these parameters as you're going through. You're looking at, you want to actually figure out, did my experiment pass? Did it fail? How do I amplify it when I need to? How do I dampen things when things don't come true? And in an agile perspective, what I want is the minimum amount of process possible during this so I don't weigh it down. I don't over-bias the data itself. Everyone know David Hussman at all? Any hands? We just lost him in the agile community this year. He is a great friend of mine. If you get a chance online to view any of his work, do it. His stuff was brilliant. It's a huge loss to our community this last year. Too many deaths. Stan Lee yesterday. That makes me sad too. Anyway, my point, just to wrap this whole thing up, is that when we're dealing with unknowns, the whole aspect of how we approach our place that we're at and the tools that we use, and specifically the mindset that we're using, we need to encompass a different operating system and different methods. I challenge you as you go through to this whole event for the week and try to find more of these things of how you do a probe, sense, respond. I'm going to be looking for these things as I go through as well. What I discovered in my career so far is that we spend a lot too much time on the analysis side of this. There's tools, vendors out there, it's all about analysis. There's all sorts of other talks that are going to talk about the analysis stuff. In the open space, if we get a chance, I'd love to have a brainstorm with you guys about how we can bring in new methods to do better and safe experimentation so that we can gain knowledge quickly. And with that, thank you. I have 5 minutes, so that means we can do questions. Any questions? Or did I do so good? What's up?
What's your biggest challenge as a coach?
Ooh, what's my biggest challenge as a coach? that people think that Agile is a destination, that they don't understand what their business goals of what they're trying to achieve with Agile, and they say, I want to be Agile, and it's like, well, that's not a goal. That's, a goal is I want to improve employee satisfaction, or I want to, increase my delivery performance or increase my capacity. And Agile is the way that I'm going to go do that. That's my biggest challenge today. That's true. That's true. The other thing is that this whole comparison of what a coach is. I'm good at certain things, and I know my limitations. I think a lot of coaches in organizations don't say, hey, I'm good at these things. That's where you should focus me on. And by the way, I'm not good over here. But I'm willing to learn. But we're going to learn together, Other question? Yes? Oh, because we're all connected, man. At the Planck scale, you mean, as far as the parallels of whether or not Heisenberg's theories and... Yeah. Well, the reason why I put the Heisenberg in there is because, as you know, the particle can be in multiple places until measured. And so the longer you stay in chaos, the least you have measured such system. So sometimes situationally, I want to leave it there and consciously not make a decision because I want that particle or that requirement to be wide open. And then as I progress down my life cycle, I then do the first measurement or create the first measurement or the KPI or the user story. Those all lock that into place now. And there's no more creativity sometimes with it. So sometimes I want to stay on the other side of the unordered space. Did that answer your question? Okay. Yes? Right. Well, my wife used to say, keep that Agile stuff at work, please. And I remember my son had a real difficulty with, he's dyslexic, and he's horribly dyslexic, and he was having a hard time reading. And so we sat down and I showed him a Kanban board, because he was actually crying. He says, I don't have any time to play, because I'm always struggling to read my books. And so I said, well, I think you play more than you think, because we don't tend to remember everything that we do in the week. And so we did a Kanban board, and he at the end of the week would retrospect and say, wow, actually, I did pretty good with my time management, and I did have fun this last week. I went off on a business trip. And I came back, and my older daughter, I walked by her room, and there's a Kanban board on her wall. And I'm like, where'd that come from? Oh, Gabe taught me this. And then several weeks later, and I went on another trip, and I come back, and my wife had one. And also, at the time, my 5-year-old daughter did too. And I don't have the picture here. I could show it to you later. But it's the cutest thing with her sitting there with her little Kanban board. And, she had things like, play, laundry, eat. So it does influence, again, into your personal life. I find, by the way, the best role model you can be is if you're going to coach, just don't tell people stuff. Do it yourself and share what works for you. And also share the things that don't work. And I think that makes you a much more genuine person through that. If you guys want to get in contact with me, but by the way, I'll fit one plug here, and I'm over time, I know. But I actually do a monthly event called the Agile Coaching Network. If you go up to agilecoachingnetwork.org, This is a part of the Agile Alliance. I'm actually also a staff member there. It's a monthly event. You guys can come in and join, and we just have a jam session where we just talk about all these ideas openly. It actually then becomes a podcast after that, which everyone has a podcast nowadays, so I know that's not sexy, but you can also go up there and listen to the other 24 episodes of this network.